Level 1. You are standing by the back door of a grocery store in Brooklyn, clutching a phone with a cracked screen and watching a message flash over your shift alarm. Late one more time. Don't bother coming in. Steam is pouring out of the kitchen behind the door. Your jacket smells like grease and detergent, and your boots are soaked with dirty snow. You did not come to the United States for this life, but right now your whole world is a basement sink, a room with no window, and money transfers back home that leave you with less for food than for the subway. When the shift lead steps out for a smoke, an older worker from the floor motions you over. Without wasting words, he hands you a cake box and an address in Brighton. 10 minutes there, 10 back. Just drop it off. You take the box because 2 of those walks pay more than half a day at the sink. Outside, you walk faster than usual, flinching every time a siren wails or a car brakes too hard. At a tourist office with no customers, they let you in after a camera blinks above the door. They take the box. A bill is pushed into your hand, along with a new address. That night, you go back to the sink, stand elbow deep in greasy water again, and count in your head the rent for your bunk, the debt for fake papers, the money for food, the money for your mother. For the first time in a long while, it feels like a shortcut has opened up beside you. But even that first evening, you understand something. A shortcut is just another word for a trap people walk into on their own. Level 2. Now, you are not carrying boxes on foot anymore. You are sitting behind the wheel of an old black Lincoln outside a restaurant on Brighton Beach, waiting for a man to come out of the side door, the kind of man who is not supposed to wait. There is a cup of cheap coffee in the passenger seat, a second phone in the glove box, and a gym bag in the back that you were told not to ask about. From the outside, it all looks almost respectable. You are just a driver. But inside this job, every move somehow has to happen half a second earlier and half a tone quieter. By day, you pick people up from the airport. At night, you drive them to addresses with no signs, to banquet halls, second-floor offices, apartments with expensive doors and stairwells that are too quiet. You learn not to look in the rearview mirror when a passenger presses a napkin to his lip. You learn to delete addresses the second the ride is over. You learn to keep your face still when a police cruiser rides alongside you for too long. The first serious mistake happens over something small. You stop at the wrong entrance. Just 20 extra seconds under somebody else's camera. Later, at the car wash, they do not hit you, and they do not even raise their voice. The older worker shows you the footage on his phone, sets a plastic coffee cup on the hood, and asks whether you understand that mistakes here do not come in small and large. You stay silent, feeling the keys bite into your palm. They do not throw you out. They just take your old phone, hand you a new one, and give you the route for the next night. On the way home, you catch yourself no longer thinking of the police cars as protection. Now they are just one more variable that can ruin everything. Level 3. A couple of weeks later, they stop keeping you in the car. Now you climb the stairs yourself, ring the bell, and remind people that debts are not forgotten here. Officially, it is called collecting the remainder, or closing out the tail. In reality, you are going to places where people are already waiting for bad news. In your hand is a list of addresses. In your pocket, cash for the subway and the second phone that can never be turned off. The first stop is a dry cleaner in Queens. Inside, there is steam, damp heat, clothes hanging on rails, and a man behind the counter trying to smile too calmly. You tell him the amount, the date, and the new deadline. He says he has problems, that the cash got tied up, that his cousin let him down. You stand there, listening to a machine humming in the back room, and notice the red camera light in the corner. Everything in the room is saying the same thing. Do not make a scene. Just finish the job. Then come a laundromat, a phone repair shop, the back door of a small bar, a betting counter under the drone of a television. Somewhere, they ask you to come inside. Somewhere, they keep you on the threshold. Somewhere, they deliberately drag it out. By evening, you have crumpled cash in your pockets, check marks on your list, and the sticky feeling that people are looking at you not as a person, but as a receipt with legs. At the last address, $100 are missing. You are already about to pretend you did not notice, but your eyes catch on the empty line in the notebook, and you realize that if you start feeling sorry, they will teach you very quickly what somebody else's weakness costs. You go back to the door, knock a second time, and collect the missing amount. On the way downstairs, you notice that your hands are no longer shaking. That is not relief. That is what happens to a person who has been doing dirty work for too long without a pause. Level 4. Your real breaking point begins in an apartment above a 24-hour laundromat, where the hallway smells like detergent, dampness, and yesterday's food. From the outside, it is an ordinary building. Peeling paint, an old mat by the door, a yellow ceiling light. But even before you reach the entrance, you notice the second man. He is not walking beside you. He stays one floor below, standing by the railing as if he is just waiting. Everything here is arranged in advance, so you understand the rule without anyone explaining it. If the debt is not paid in full, then somebody else does the talking after the first visitor is done. The woman does not open right away. She is wearing a wrinkled house sweater, her hair pulled together in a rush, and behind her a dim night light is glowing. On the table are bills, a plastic container with leftover dinner, and cheap medicine. By the wall are children's boots. You tell her the amount. She brings you an envelope. You count the money right there in the doorway, and by the second stack you already see it is short. The woman reads it on your face before you say a word. She starts explaining fast, saying she will bring the rest tomorrow, that her child was sick, that her payment got delayed, pointing at the bills, the kitchen, the empty refrigerator. Footsteps sound on the stairs. Not hurried, ordinary, that makes it worse. You could have shut the door. You could have said no one was home. You could have at least asked for more time. But instead, you just step aside and stare out the dirty window at the parking lot, where the alarm lights are blinking on an old Honda. Behind your back, you hear a struggle, a thud against the wall, a muffled cry, then silence, with the television hissing soundlessly through it. When you turn around, the woman is sitting on the floor, pressing a hand to her face. The missing bills are lying on the side table. Outside, you throw up into the melting snow. A minute later, you still make the call and say in a steady voice, "The matter is closed." In that moment, it becomes clear that they were not testing her. They were testing how far you were willing to step away from yourself. Level 5. The next step looks quieter and even more legitimate. You end up in a warehouse by the highway, where the air smells like cardboard, dust, vending machine coffee, and the hot brakes of forklifts. From the outside, it is ordinary logistics. Gates, pallets, scanners, manifests, drivers in safety vests. Inside, there is a constant feeling that every piece of paperwork has been written so that, if necessary, anybody can be made guilty. Now, you are not watching people at doors. You are watching the movement of boxes, numbers, shifts, and trucks. On the desk in front of you are a clipboard, disposable gloves, a box cutter, a cheap laptop, and a list of routes you cannot afford to mix up even in your head. You check labels, give directions to couriers, close out the shift, and learn to speak in short sentences. The danger here is not loud. Nobody needs to raise their voice. One wrong container is enough. One extra email from a shipping clerk. One camera looking in the wrong direction. One evening, a shipment shows up that is not supposed to arrive until morning. The driver is yelling. The forklift operator does not want to sign, and there is already an email hanging in the inbox about a mismatch in the paperwork. You stand between the dock, the screen, and the people, and understand that if normal panic starts now, the trail will lead straight to you. You shut off the extra light, swap the pallets, reprint the sheet, send one worker out for a smoke break, tell another to keep quiet, and move the boxes yourself so the labels stay out of the camera's view. After midnight, the warehouse goes quiet, and only the printer rattles in the empty office. You sit in a plastic chair, staring at the dusty monitor, and realize they have stopped using you as just a courier. But it does not feel like a promotion. It feels more like the moment they handed you part of the work they can question you for separately later. Level 6. The federal agents come in the morning, while you are still chewing a stale bagel in the little office over the warehouse floor. First, the internal line rings. Then, one of the dock doors slams hard enough to shake the glass. Then, voices echo up from below, sharp and official, carrying the kind of urgency nobody in this business mistakes for anything else. You stand so fast the coffee tips across a stack of manifests. On the screen is a spreadsheet with routes and names. In the safe below the desk is cash. In the cabinet is a box of phones. In the printer tray is a page that should never have existed in the first place. This is a different kind of fear now. Not the kind where your own people might pull you aside for a talk. The kind where the system arrives with warrants, evidence bags, and enough patience to take every shelf apart, piece by piece. You yank the network cable from the laptop, pull the hard drive from the tower, sweep 2 burner phones off the desk, and dump them into the utility sink beside the filing cabinet. One hits the metal edge, falls to the floor, and stays lit. You crush it under your heel, and in that same second you hear the office door downstairs give way. They put you on the ground with no movie drama and no wasted motion. A knee between your shoulders. Cold zip ties biting into your wrists. Somebody shouting instructions over the hum of the forklifts. The smell of dust, wet concrete, and spilled coffee in your nose. Then a white interview room. A plastic chair. A vending machine that eats your dollar. And the same question in different forms. Who gave the orders? Who handled the money? Who had access to the loads? You do not turn into a hero, and you do not play the silent soldier either. You just keep saying you worked deliveries, inventory, and shift coordination, while every pause dries your throat out a little more. 2 days later, lawyers get you out. When you come back, half the warehouse crew is gone, part of the equipment has been hauled away, and several desks sit empty under the fluorescent lights. But your station upstairs has not been touched. That is not mercy. It means only one thing. After the pressure from outside, you did not collapse right away. So now they are going to put even more weight on you. Level 7. After the raid, everything changes faster than you can get used to it. Some people disappear without warning. Others go to ground. A third group suddenly become too cautious to trust with anything. They put you at the point where the routes, the money, and other people's mistakes now pass through. Not because you are the best. Just because you stayed, remembered too much, and did not break when everybody else flinched. The work shifts to a back office above a betting shop. Televisions hum all the time, phones ring, and the printer keeps clicking. On the desk are stacks of receipts, cash wrapped in bank bands, cheap pens, a laptop full of spreadsheets, and heartburn pills you now carry in your pocket. You assign routes, decide who gets one more day to collect, and who gets pulled off the line, check the cash, match the totals, and watch the cameras. Mistakes do not usually look like fights anymore. More often, they look like a missing amount that has to be covered by somebody else's life. One day, a runner disappears with a bag and turns his phone off. Before, you would have waited for a call from above. Now, silence means the choice is yours. You pull up camera feeds, call parking lots, cheap motels, and familiar lots, and an hour later they bring the man back. He is standing in front of you with a split lip, trembling hands, and words that do not come together into an explanation. You do not shout. You just take his phone, his keys, and his passport. You drop the documents into the shredder and press the button. Plastic and paper vanish in strips into the bin. The room stays quiet the whole time. That is exactly what makes it worst of all. Now, you are no longer the one being moved down the hallway. Now, you are part of the machinery that makes other people helpless. Level 8. From the outside, your life begins to look cleaner than it used to. A clean car, a rented apartment in a building with a new elevator, shirts from the dry cleaner. Meetings in places where the check is paid without anyone looking at it. But inside, everything has only gotten tighter. You live inside the phone, inside the schedule, inside spreadsheets, lease agreements, and signatures that cannot be made with the wrong pen. Now, your job is not just cash and routes, but front businesses too. A car wash, a trucking company, a cash-heavy diner. Accounting, insurance, bank issues, tax questions. Every day is broken into small blows. In the morning, the accountant writes about a mismatch in the reports. In the afternoon, bank compliance asks you to explain a strange transfer. In the evening, the commercial landlord reminds you about a late payment. At night, a worker does not show up for the shift, and the camera by the back entrance freezes at exactly the moment it should not. You look less and less like a dangerous man, and more like a worn-out manager trying to hold shaky walls upright against each other. At this level, there is no longer any feeling of speed, only chronic pressure. You sit in a glass conference room, stare at your own reflection in the dark screen, and realize that every decision leaves a mark now. If you shut down one line, a second one falls apart. If you cover for one person, a whole location sinks. If you let the paperwork slip, the next knock will come not from a courier, but from the government. Late at night, you open the refrigerator in the apartment and see an empty shelf, a can of energy drink, and a container with leftovers. The phone vibrates again. You did not make it to freedom. You made it to the layer where you have more access, but almost no switch left to turn anything off. Level 9. When the man above you is removed from the structure, there is no elegant transfer of power. After the funeral, people just start looking at you a little longer than they used to, and speaking a little more carefully. The funeral home smells like wax, lilies, and air conditioning. People shake your hand, say neutral things, and do not stay long. You stand there in a dark suit, feeling the collar cut into your neck, and understand that now every request, every conflict, every breakdown is going to come to you first. From that day on, the space around you narrows. You no longer have random evenings. No road without a second car behind you, no real sleep. In the office, the desk is covered with folders, phones, spare SIM cards, blood pressure pills, lease agreements, and printouts of cash shortfalls. You are no longer a runner and no longer a collector. You are the one who has to keep all of it together, even though none of it is held together honestly. By the end of the month, an old cash point starts falling apart. A city inspector begins showing up too often at one location, and a trucking route suddenly draws extra attention. None of the problems looks like the end by itself. Together, they form a pattern that turns everything cold inside you. You spend the night over a map of payments, matching shifts, crossing people out, shutting one route down, freezing another, cutting someone's access, sending someone farther away. In the morning, the office is quiet, the air conditioner is humming, the coffee is cold, and in the glass you see the face of a man who is officially higher than he used to be. But it does not feel like the top. It feels more like the place where you hear first that the floor underneath is already beginning to crack. Level 10. It is 6 in the morning now. In the office above the closed store, it is still dark, and only the camera monitors are cutting the room with blue light. On one screen is an empty parking lot. On another, the warehouse door. On the third, a hallway with a flickering light. On the fourth, a staircase nobody has started climbing yet. On the desk in front of you is an open lease folder, a stack of disposable cups, chargers, keys, 2 phones, half a sandwich, and an old Metro card worn smooth from the days when you were taking late shifts to wash dishes. You pick it up, turn it over in your hand, and stare at it longer than you meant to. There is more truth about you in this cheap plastic card than in all the equipment spread across the desk. The phone vibrates. The accountant wants a signature. The landlord is waiting for payment. One worker has vanished from the line. The attorney moved the meeting. You answer one call, decline another, sign a document, and in that same moment hear a door slam downstairs. Then another. Then sharp voices, quick steps, and a short shout. Federal agents, you have seconds, but there is no time left for anything. Not to pull cables, not to drown phones, not to invent a new version of your life. The office door flies inward. Men in body armor fill the room too fast for your mind to catch up with your body. They spin you toward the desk, slam you against the edge. Metal snaps around your wrists, and the old Metro card falls to the floor and slides under the cabinet. As they lead you down the stairs, you find yourself thinking not about money, not about routes, not about the people who will disappear now. You think about that basement kitchen, the steam, the dirty water, the room with no window, and the way back then you thought you were living badly. Now it becomes clear how normal, how human that life really was compared to this one. Outside, the morning is already bright, and inside you there is nothing but emptiness, as if everything you got into this for had ended long ago. You just did not notice it until now.